Hello and welcome. I hope you're safe and well. In today's exciting episode, I make a handbag. Well, first we look at some vintage handbags and some other high fashion handbags. Then I decide what sort of design I want and then I make it. So let's do this.
It's perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Perfect jacket.
I was going to make a dress or a jacket, but I've been beading, so I don't have, that's what I've been doing with most of my sewing time, and it's not very cinematic because I'm just using the exact same bead each time. So that's not finished either. So this was the last jacket I made, and I've got a scrap of leather left over, like a pretty sizable scrap. Well, it's a reasonable size, but it's an odd shape, so I can get a few strips out of it. And anyway, I think it's enough to do a handbag, like one side of a handbag and the strip that goes around it to give it a bit of dimension. And then the other side can just be fully beaded. And I've got these, they're plastic, but they look like bamboo handbag handles. So if you use two, they look a bit tacky, but if I use one, it looks more like bamboo. So yeah, I'm going to have it, the handbag, it's going to be a vintage style one, I think, and it's going to be thin at the top, so it just needs one handbag and both handles will hook to it. And then it's going to be bigger at the bottom, I think. And yeah, as I said, there's only enough faux leather to do one side and the strip that bulks it out. So I think on the other side, I'll just do it fully beaded, maybe with the gold beads, maybe with the leftover beads from the other jacket. So yeah, or a mix of things. I'm not really sure. Anyway, or yeah, I do have loads of green beads, so I could do all green beads on one side or all black and green beads on one side, and then the antique leather, faux leather on the other. I'm not sure. Anyway, so that's my idea of using all these bits and bobs up. So what I need to do is look at handbags. Spoiler alert, that's the design I go with. But yeah, so this is just a range of different handbags, mostly designer. Some of them are vintage. And yeah, from the 50s, 60s, that's Dior from 1947, which is the year of the new look. That one is gorgeous, but the beading is kind of boring to do. That's embroidery rather than beading. That's see-through. I love the birds on the top. That one's just really pretty. And so some of these I collected because this one's good. I know how to make fringe, so that won't be interesting. These ones are beautiful, but it's basically made of metal. And this one is gorgeous, but you really need a handbag if it's fully beaded. I don't want to touch it. That one's just so chic. But I'm not buying a new sewing machine. I've got a vintage sewing machine. So I need something simple enough that I can either hand sew it or I can machine sew it on my standard, but it's sturdy, but it's also standard, my machine. Yeah. But also I want something really classic, clean lines, so that I can put loads of beads on it and you'll still be able to see that it's a handbag. So if it's really detailed design and very textured and lots of fabric manipulation, then you can't really add beads to it. Whereas if it's a nice, simple, classic, clean design, you can just add loads of beads to it and it still looks chic. That's gorgeous. But what are you going to keep in there? Suppose if you had lipstick, but my phone's too big to fit in there. What's the point of a handbag even if you can't put a novel in there? But yeah, I like that owl one. This one looks good, but you're just basically using twice as much leather on it to make the bow. That one's a beautiful shape. This one is gorgeous. They're just, some of them, that one is beautiful too. But obviously I'll be making it out of fabric and beading into it. The thing with beaded handbags is you have to, because handbags are so small, you basically have to bead the piece, then you have to sew it together. So it has to be relatively simple to sew together. Otherwise you just wreck the beading once it was done. So, or I could partially sew bits together, then bead it all, then sew the easy seams that are left to sew. So yeah, it's tricky. That one's beautiful. But yeah, again, I just want simple handles as well. So I have bought a couple of handles and I'm going to use those up. But otherwise, if the handles are fabric, like the same fabric as the handbag, then I want them to be quite easy to do because, yeah, that's a good one. But I'd make it out of fabric, not wicker basket. That one's gorgeous, but if you do cutouts, it weakens the structural integrity. Anyway, so yeah, I just want something, this is the one I go with, but yeah, and I'm going to add a strip in between. It's not going to be just front and back. I'm going to add a strip in between to bulk it out a little bit as well. And maybe that will make it easier to sew together. We shall see. So I made a little sketch and then I scaled it up. At this point, they're both two, the left and the right are two different designs. And I sort of split the difference. And yeah, this is me just checking. It's obviously a sewing pattern, but they're about the same size as a novel. So I'm just checking I can fit a book in here. But I forgot I'm using one handle, not two. So you can't actually get the book in there. So annoying. Anyway, so I made the top of the handbag a little lower so that you could get your hand in more easily. Because I hate it when you have a handbag and you have to like put it down, then fish around inside your bag. I like it when you can keep your handbag on the crook of your arm and just look at like scrounge around inside for your phone or whatever it is with the other hand. And that way you don't have to like put down your coffee or whatever it is. Anyway, so yes, so this is what we're going with here. And I just put the handle on to check. I ended up bringing it down a little bit. But yeah, and the line around the edge is obviously you have to add seam allowance all around it. And it does take a while, but I mean, you have to do it. So then I just clearly marked which one was which and scribbled out the lines that I didn't want. And then I made another copy. So I've got a template and I'll change it. But yeah, I just traced a separate one and cut that out. So now we are ready to cut out the bits of fabric. So I need so this is a template to see whether it'll work to bead. So I need 2 bits of outer fabric for the front and the back, 2 bits of lining, and I need 2 bits of structural layer, so stiff netting, because yeah, I just want to see what it looks like with all the base fabrics and then whether it would be good to bead. So that is what we're going to do. And once I've cut those out, I'm also going to have to cut out the strip that goes in between them. So here we go. And this is me just double checking, I think, so this is an actual novel, not a sewing pattern, and just checking that it fits. But once again, I forgot that I'm just using one handle, not 2 handles. So if you stitch them, like if there's 2 handles, you can open the purse wide up and then put a novel in. But if it's one handle, it's all stitched together at the top. Anyway, so I cut out my 2 netting layers, my 2 for the front and back outer, and my 2 for the lining front and back. So we've got all the bits there, and then I just pin together the outer layer. I mean, they're all black cotton, but the outer layer and this lining, the outer layer and the netting for the front, the outer layer and the netting for the back. So you could also stitch on a pocket at this point if you wanted, and also an internal pocket on the lining if you wanted. So with the leftover fabric, I cut out 2 bits of, so this is the strip that goes in between them and it makes up the base of the handbag. See, here is the finished handbag, and instead of just having the front and the back and stitching them together, you add a 3rd piece that runs in between the 2 of them. It does make the construction much more difficult, but it also means that it's, you can actually put stuff in there and it's much easier to feel around in your bag as well. And it will, if it's beaded, it will just make it look much better and make it age really well. And also it means you can rest your handbag, like it will stand up by itself. You don't always have to lean it against something. So anyway, I did one for the outer, and the outer one has the netting, and then the lining one is just cotton. So then I pinned together the front side, the back side, and the strip in between, and you do one side. So the front side, you pin the strip around that, and once that's done, I just put it on the novel so you could see what it looks like. So you add the front to the center strip, and once that's done, you add the back to the center strip. And it's quite complex, but as long as you go really slowly and match up your notches, obviously you have to I only did 3 notches, which was not quite enough. I do 5 or 8 notches or something like that, and that way you are certain to have everything matching. So then I machine sewed it with making sure I did the correct seam allowance, and there we go. So now I have all the 3 parts of the outer bag are together, all the 3 parts of the inner of the lining bag are all together, and they're just sewn at the bottom. So now what I have to do is clip the curves, and then I have to turn the lining bag in the correct way, because now I have to sew the lining and the outer bag together. And so they've got right sides together, and I sort of tuck the lining bag inside the outer bag, and I only sew them together on the outside edges. I don't sew the actual inside of the handles. I've got a line there, a machine line there, to tell me where the actual seam line is, because I'm going to have to do that by hand later, but I do not machine sew them. So I just do the outside parts of one side and the outside of the other side, and also it goes across that center strip as well. And after I'd done that, I turned it all out the correct way, which I can do because I left that bit in the middle here. And now what I have to do is fold back the seam allowance and hand sew the last bit, which took forever, so that's why it's dark now. But then the next step is that I have to so I just pinned the handle into place, and I can just show you what it's going to look like, I made the front and the back handles, strap bits, that's what they're called, straps, the same length, but now I'm just going to cut 2 centimeters, or 2/3 of an inch off one side, and it's going to sort of sit over itself. So one side, the front side, is shorter and the back side is longer. So the back actually goes through the handle clasp thing. And then I've just put 2 pins there where I'm going to hand sew. And so I hook it through, and then you just hand sew it like a billion times. You're supposed to do a square and then an X inside it. So it's a lot of reinforcement, but what it means is, because essentially this part here is going to have the whole weight of everything you put in your handbag is going to be supported by those stitches that hold the handle on. So you do have to stitch it a lot, but you can't really see the stitches. It's black on black. And there we go. The hand stitching took a long time, so I think there's probably a better way to do. You know how the burrito method works on when you're making a bodice? I'm pretty sure you can do the same thing with a handbag, but this was just me making a template and just sort of seeing whether it would look good with beading on it. And I do think it's a nice, simple, classic shape. It bugs me that I can't put a novel in there, but I mean, you can have ebooks, I suppose. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. Also, this is me just putting some bulk in the bag to see if it keeps its shape well, which it does. But I couldn't put anything heavy in because I've just hung it up with a pin. So yeah, and I mean, it's a sturdy pin, and this is what it looks like when it's on your shoulder or like from the side. And yeah, I really like this. It's I think if you made the actual bag part of the handbag like twice as deep or twice as big, that would be a really nice bag. And that way you could put and still just use the one handle. I think that would work. I might make it a little bit thinner and longer, and that way you could put like you could put your book in there and a few other things as well. I wouldn't make it too big because the bigger your handbag, the more stuff you put in there. But I like this one, but I also think it would work better if it was thinner and longer. But this is a good shape. I think I can bead this. I do have to think about how I would construct it. I think I'll sew the front and the center strip together and maybe add the lining as well. So not this way. Basically, keep the back off and do all the beading on the front, and I don't know whether to bead the bottom section. I'll have to think about it some more, because I mean it's basically on the shoulder bag. It's a decorative bag rather than a big practical bag. When that's the case, the bottom part of the bag usually forms part of the design, like the aesthetic. So I'm not sure. See, when you turn the bag on the side, you can pretty much see the whole of the undercarriage of it. That's what I mean by it has to, if you don't have beading on there, it's obvious. Or if you stop the beading on that center strip at a certain point, it's really obvious. I think what I'll do is just have 4 big beads that are bigger than the others. And so they can be sort of the feet of the bag. So it is protected. The beading is protected whenever you rest it on its base. But it's also aesthetically one. I think that's what I might do. Anyway, I have a long way off. I'm not going to make the beaded one next. I've got to finish this jacket here. And I've done one side of the front and I'm starting on the first sleeve. And then I have all of the back and all of the other side, like the sleeve and the other side of the front to go. So we've got quite some ways to go, but I do really love this. And I love doing a jacket. Like, they are very time consuming, but just with one type of bead and one type of sequin, it's so old school. Anyway, that is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you've been inspired to draft your own handbag and make it. Oh, handles and beads. There's a jewelry making section and a hobby section in Joann's or any large fabric store. Just go there and they have a different range. There's different ones in each store, and they just buy new ones every time. So it's kind of a luck of the draw. But yeah, I tend to just buy one of this, one of that, and then see which ones work and which ones don't. And then you know which ones to buy next time. Or if you don't live near a store, then eBay or Etsy. So yeah, that's it. Thanks again for watching and happy sewing.